Hello, Maud Hart Lovelace readers. I'm going to give you a rundown on the Division I Maud Hart Lovelace Award nominees for the 2014-2015 year. I am a fifth grade teacher and I have read about half these books and I will be going through them with you today. First, we start off with who Maud Hart Lovelace is. She lived from 1892 to 1980. She grew up near Mankato, Minnesota, and later moved up to the cities with her family. She went to the U of M there, and in that time of going to college, she also traveled to California to see her grandmother, and she toured over in Europe for a little while. When she came back to the United States, about World War I time, she met her future husband. They soon were married and moved out to New York, where her husband was a journalist and she began writing. After their daughter was born, Maud started to tell her some stories of her childhood. And these stories that she started to tell reminded her of her growing up days in Mankato, and she decided to write them down, and that's where the famous Betsy Tacy books came from. And because of these Betsy Tacy books, children were able to read. Before that, books were mostly for adults. So she is well known for getting books out there for children to read. There are some guidelines to nominate a book. Books are nominated by parents, teachers, and librarians. The author has to be living. And the book that's nominated needs to be also available in paperback by February of that year. And the copyright must be within the last 5 years, so it needs to be a recent book. There are also some guidelines for students. If you'd like to vote for the Maud Hart Lovelace nominees, you need to be in the specified grade. Today I'm going over Division I, which is 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So if you would like to vote for one of these books in Division I, you need to be in one of those grades. Also, you need to make sure you have read 3 or more of the nominated books. That way you have more of a variety and have read more than just the one. Last year's Division I winner was Because of Mr. Turrup. And the Division II winner was Out of My Mind. This year's nominees for grades 3 through 5 are, now these books are not in any specific order, they're actually in alphabetical order by the title. First up is Aliens on Vacation. Scrubs is more than just a little shocked when his taxi pulls up in front of his grandmother's intergalactic bed and breakfast inn. Of all the places that his parents have dumped him for this summer, this is by far the dumpiest. The 3-story Victorian house is painted black and decorated with glittered comets, stars, and planets. And the first person who comes out the front door is a very weird, tall dude who sniffs the mailbox. What kind of crazy stay here? Grandma's got an explanation. Each bedroom in the inn contains a portal, and she hosts extraterrestrials who want to vacation on Earth. Scrub's job is to entertain the alien guests and keep the townspeople from learning her secret. How do you disguise something that is 10 feet tall and has tentacles? The townspeople are already suspicious of Grandma's New Age lifestyle, and the nosy sheriff would love to shut down the inn. When the alien antics cause cosmic chaos and mind-bending mayhem ensues, the town's mounting prejudice and fear cause a mob reaction. It's up to Scrubs to save the day and the inn. The next one is As Simple as It Seems. Until the last few months of her 5th grade year, Verbena Coulter was happy. She lived a good life with her unusual but loving parents in the tiny Catskill town of Clydesdale. Though she has an uncool first name, is scrawny, sports almost white hair, lacks coordination, wears clunky glasses, and is a struggling student, she does fine. She even has a friend, Annie Bingham. Verbena doesn't realize she's a ticking time bomb, that she is a living lie. By the end of the school year, her life blows up. It turns out that the Coulters adopted her. Her real father is in prison for murder, and her drunkard mother walked out immediately after Verbena's birth, leaving Verbena on her own to cope with fetal alcohol syndrome. Now Verbena knows she is bad news. With real parents like hers, how could she be anything but trouble? And Annie? Well, she's not much of a friend anymore. With her life spiraling downward, Verbena turns moody and mean. She argues with her 70-year-old dad and says terrible things to her overweight mother. More than anything, Verbena wishes she could be someone else. When Pooch and his mom rent the cottage next door for the summer, Verbena gets a chance to be that other person. Since the boy sees Verbena only at the lake where a girl drowned long ago, he thinks she's the girl's ghost. It is all fun and games until it goes terribly wrong, and Pooch's life ends up in jeopardy. Somehow, Verbena has to make everything right again. The next book is Belly Up. Teddy Fitzroy knows more about animals than any other 12-year-old. In fact, after spending his first 10 years in the Congo with his famed gorilla researcher mom and wildlife photographer dad, he probably knows more than most adults. Now, his parents work in Texas at the largest zoo in the nation, and Teddy loves living on the zoo grounds. But when the zoo's 4,000-pound star attraction, a hippo named Henry, is found murdered, Teddy joins the zoo owner's daughter, Summer, in tracking down the killer. Problem is, there's a long list of wacky suspects, including the owner himself, J.J. McCracken, and the head of security, Large Marge. Whoever killed Henry is trying to hamper their investigation. Even with scary black mamba and hungry tiger accidents, Summer and Teddy are determined to catch the bad guy. Next up is Benjamin Frankenstein Lives. Is it cheating if you get the real Benjamin Franklin to help you win the top prize in the school science fair? You see, Ben Franklin never died. 200 years ago, the famed statesman slash inventor had himself put in suspended animation in a special chamber he invented. A secret organization was supposed to hide and protect the chamber until the nation needed Ben's help and he could be reanimated. But his last keeper died without leaving a successor, and a big jolt of lightning unexpectedly brought Ben back to the world of living. In the cellar of his mother's run-down boarding house, super science nerd Victor discovers the greenish Ben in a hidden secret laboratory. Promising to help Ben find other members of the secret order, Victor helps Ben lend a hand with his volcano science project. Out of touch for 200 years, Ben is a social klutz. Not only that, if he doesn't get regular electrical jolts, he turns into a zombie. And too much juice turns him into a raging Frankenstein. Victor, who lives life according to probabilities, is calculating the odds. His volcano project has a 73% chance of winning the science fair prize, but predicting what Ben will do next is a little more daunting. Next one is Breadcrumbs. The day her best friend stopped talking to her, it snowed. That morning, 11-year-old Hazel ran outside in her pajamas to discover a silent, white, pristine world. As she stood on her stoop, her next-door neighbor, Jack, pelted her with a snowball. She giggled and promised to get even as soon as she was dressed. How was she to know that his heart was going to be pierced by a shard of magical mirror? Now he was gone. No, he didn't die. With his heart iced, emotionally frozen and acting in a weird way, Jack just went off into the Minnesota woods in a sled pulled by wolves, with a ghostly woman dressed all in white. But just because Jack rebuffed her doesn't mean Hazel will abandon her friend, so she follows, determined to rescue him. But this forest is enchanted, filled with twisty fairy tale characters. All her life Hazel has been a dreamer, one whose mind is filled with marvelous images. But not like this. There is a child ensnared in a body of a bird and kids imprisoned in flowers. Hazel even has a strange encounter with Minnesota Twins all-star catcher Joe Mauer. Can Hazel make her way through this weird white world and rescue Jack from the Snow Queen? One thing is certain, there is no breadcrumb path to lead her back home. And all fairy tales don't end with happily ever after. Up next is Ghost Dog Secrets. It started as just a glance while Rusty rode the bus to school that nasty, cold October day. For just a moment he saw a shivering German shepherd chained to a tree, without food or water. That isn't right. He worried about the dog all day, and after school he crept into the yard and gave the dog food. He knew it was wrong, but he had to do it. As the days pass, the dog remains chained and unfed, and each day Rusty returns with food. One day, the oddest thing happens. As Rusty kneels by the dog, he feels an animal brush up against him. When he turns, he sees the ghostly spirit of a collie. The ghost dog lets Rusty know that the shepherd is injured. Now Rusty will stop at nothing to save the German shepherd. With the help of his friend Andrew, the two unchain the shepherd and hide him in their old fort. Things become complicated when the owner accuses Rusty of stealing the dog. As Rusty enlists aid of his mother, his teacher, the animal control officer, and the police, the ghost dog leads Rusty to two more abused dogs. Will he be stealing them or rescuing them? Is he doing right or wrong? The next one is Guinea Dog. Dogs drool and shed. They whine, bark, beg and bite. They lick other dogs' butts, piddle and poop. For those reasons, the page and pages full of other reasons, Rufus is uptight, work at home in a suit, tie, and ugly blue slippers, writer of a dad, vows they will never own a dog. But fifth grader Rufus yearns for a dog. His best friend has a totally awesome pooch. Even his worst frenemy has a canine. Rufus keeps pestering his mom. Mom prides herself on solving problems. So one night after work, she appears with a cage containing one orange, pudgy guinea pig sporting a spiky white mohawk. Is Mom crazy? Does she really think this pipsqueak female rodent is as good as a dog? Suddenly responsible for caring for an animal he definitely does not want, Rufus sarcastically names her Fido. Trying to keep the lame pet a secret from his classmates, he hopes she'll end up back at the pet store soon. But plump punk Fido is clever. More canine than guinea pig, she does all the usual doggy tricks. Though she has some issues with barking, biting, and chewing on Dad's shoes. She even eats Rufus's homework and fetches a frisbee. Not totally bummed that the pet shop closed, Rufus has second thoughts. Maybe his mother wasn't so crazy after all. Up next is Kindred Soul. Jake is 10. Billy is 88, his 88-year-old grandfather. Every morning the two of them wake up and take a walk around the family farm. Jake's mom calls them kindred souls. Jake has never had to deal with death. It is something that doesn't even come into his mind. Billy is 88 years old and I don't worry about him dying, he says. He will live forever. I know that. One of the weirdest things Billy ever tells Jake is about the sod house he lived in while growing up. A sod house! At first, Jake doesn't know what to think. Then, Billy has to take a trip to the hospital. During that time, Jake does some research on how to build a sod house. And with no small amount of convincing, gets his family to help him build one for Billy when he comes back from the hospital. If he comes back. Young Jake is about to receive a lesson about the inevitability of death and how his family can help him face it with warmth and love. Liar and Spy is up next. When his father loses his job, young George's life is upended and they have to move into a small apartment in Brooklyn. His mother must take on extra nursing shifts and George's home life becomes all the more lonely. Then he meets Safer. Safer is an eccentric homeschool boy who has only known life in this Brooklyn apartment. The two outcasts form a fast friendship, and Safer's family is warm and welcoming to George's, offering respite from the struggle of bullies at school and the depression of his home. Soon Safer recruits George's to become one of his spies. At first it seemed like a really fun game, as George's is dispatched to spy on one of the most mysterious apartment tenants who lives upstairs. But as the game seems to go on, Georges wonders if Safer really thinks there's something worth spying on upstairs, or whether or not Safer is a liar. In the end, truth and deception will change the two boys' friendship in surprising ways. Next is My Life as a Book. 12-year-old Derek Fallon is looking forward to a summer filled with tossing avocado grenades, smashing action figures under trucks, and climbing onto his garage roof to mess with the satellite dish in his California home. His parents have other plans for him, however, and now he's